From a cursed ranch where Charles Manson once plotted murders to the same cave that doubled as Batman's lair, The Secrets of ISIS filmed in some of Hollywood's most haunted and iconic locations. The show's budget-saving stock footage created jarring background glitches, while its studio was literally demolished mid-franchise. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about. The Secrets of ISIS. Fact 1. The Manson Ranch Connection. The Secrets of ISIS filmed some of its outdoor scenes at one of the most infamous locations in American crime history. Spahn Ranch. This dusty, sprawling property in the Santa Susana Mountains had served as the headquarters for Charles Manson and his so-called family in 1968 and 1969, right before they committed the brutal Tate LaBianca murders that shocked the nation. By the time the ISIS production crew arrived in 1975 to film their wholesome Saturday morning superhero show, only 6 years had passed since those horrific crimes. The ranch was still deeply associated with the Manson murders in the public consciousness, yet the producers chose to use it anyway, likely because it offered cheap access to Western-style terrain and existing structures. The location had been a popular filming spot for decades, hosting countless Western films and TV shows before the Manson family took up residence there. What makes this even stranger is the tonal disconnect. Here was a children's educational program about an Egyptian goddess teaching moral lessons, being filmed at the exact spot where one of America's most notorious criminals had orchestrated multiple murders. The crew members working on ISIS would have been walking the same dusty paths and standing near the same buildings where Manson's followers had lived just a few years earlier, creating an unsettling contrast between the show's positive messages and the location's dark recent history. Fact 2. Batman's cave was ISIS's cave. When the writers of The Secrets of ISIS needed a dramatic cave setting for the climax of their episode titled The Show-Off, they headed straight to one of Hollywood's most recognizable natural landmarks, Bronson Canyon in Griffith Park. This particular cave had already achieved television immortality as the entrance to the Batcave in the 1960s Batman series starring Adam West. The cave itself isn't actually a natural formation at all, but rather a former mining tunnel that was carved out of the hillside during quarrying operations decades earlier. By the time both Batman and ISIS used it for filming, the tunnel had become one of Hollywood's favorite go-to locations for any scene requiring a mysterious cave entrance. The appeal was obvious. It was free to use, easily accessible, located right in Los Angeles, and had that perfect dramatic arch shape that looked great on camera. What's particularly amusing is that both shows used the exact same cave entrance to represent completely different fictional locations, yet audiences of the time likely didn't notice or care. The cave has appeared in hundreds of films and television shows since the 1930s, playing everything from alien spacecraft landing sites to Old West hideouts. For ISIS, this meant their Egyptian goddess superhero was performing heroic rescues in the same tunnel where the caped crusader had dramatically driven his Batmobile just a decade earlier. Fact 3. The studio that vanished. Ray Art Studios in Canoga Park served as the production home for many of the Secrets of ISIS's interior scenes, but if you tried to visit that studio today, you'd find yourself looking at apartment buildings and a swimming pool instead. The massive 189,000 square foot facility was completely demolished between 2004 and 2007, erased from existence and replaced with residential housing. This wasn't just any small studio space, either. It was a significant production facility that had housed multiple sound stages where the show's indoor scenes came to life. The location where Andrea Thomas taught her science classes and transformed into the mighty ISIS is now literally someone's living room or bedroom. Where lighting rigs once hung from the ceiling, there are now ceiling fans and light fixtures for ordinary apartments. The sound stages where actors delivered their lines have been replaced by a community swimming pool where residents take their morning laps, completely unaware they're swimming above what was once Hollywood production space. This kind of total erasure is relatively common in Los Angeles, where real estate often trumps entertainment history, but it's still jarring to realize that an entire studio complex that produced a nationally televised show has vanished so completely that there's no physical trace it ever existed. The transformation from creative production space to mundane residential living represents how quickly Hollywood history can be literally paved over and forgotten. Fact 4. Arizona stood in for Egypt. When The Secrets of ISIS needed to show flashback sequences set in ancient Egypt or outdoor desert scenes that evoked the land of the pharaohs, the production team didn't book flights to Cairo or attempt to film anywhere near the actual Middle East. Instead, they drove a few hours east to Yuma, Arizona, where the American Southwest's arid landscape stood inconvincingly for Egyptian deserts. This budget-saving location choice was actually pretty clever, since the sandy terrain, rocky outcroppings, and sparse vegetation of the Arizona desert could easily pass for North African landscapes when filmed from the right angles. The producers knew that their young Saturday morning audience wouldn't scrutinize the geology or plant life in the background, so why spend thousands of dollars on international travel when perfectly good desert was available just a short drive from Los Angeles? This practice of using American Southwest locations to double for Middle Eastern or North African settings has been a Hollywood tradition for decades, dating back to the silent film era. The Yuma area in particular has hosted countless productions over the years because of its reliable sunshine, dramatic desert vistas, and proximity to California production hubs. For ISIS, this meant their Egyptian goddess could appear to be walking through her homeland's ancient sands while actually being filmed in a location where you could grab American fast food just down the road. The show used this trick repeatedly throughout its run, establishing that ancient Egypt looked suspiciously like southern Arizona. Fact 5. Wildfire destroyed the Western sets. Spahn Ranch's history of hosting Western film and television productions came to a fiery end on September 26, 1970. A massive wildfire swept through the property, destroying the film sets, buildings, and structures that had been used for countless productions over the previous decades. This fire occurred before The Secrets of ISIS began production, which means when the show's crew arrived to film in 1975, they were working at a location that was essentially the charred remains of what had once been a thriving Western filming location. The ranch had hosted an enormous number of Westerns during Hollywood's golden age, with its rustic buildings and dusty terrain providing the perfect backdrop for countless shootouts, horse chases, and frontier town scenes. All of that history went up in flames during that single September day. What makes this even more interesting is that the producers of ISIS chose to use this fire-damaged location anyway, presumably because it was cheap or free to access and still offered enough usable outdoor space for their needs. The crew would have been filming around burnt remnants and damaged structures, working at a location that was literally a shadow of its former self. The Western sets that once stood there, which had appeared in films and shows dating back decades, were gone forever, replaced by whatever minimal reconstruction had occurred in the 5 years between the fire and ISIS's arrival. The show's bright, optimistic tone contrasted sharply with the scorched earth reality of their filming location. Fact 6. Stock footage background glitches. One of the most noticeable, yet rarely discussed oddities of The Secrets of ISIS was the jarring continuity problem created by the show's reuse of transformation stock footage. Every time mild-mannered science teacher Andrea Thomas needed to become the mighty Isis, the show would cut to the same pre-filmed sequence showing the transformation in Isis flying through the sky. The problem was that this stock footage was filmed against specific backgrounds, usually clear blue skies or particular landscape features that almost never matched the location where Andrea had just been standing moments before. So Andrea might transform while standing in a forest clearing, but when the stock footage kicked in, Isis would suddenly be flying against a desert backdrop or completely different mountain range. Then, when the show cut back to the newly transformed Isis landing or taking action, she'd be back in the original forest location. This happened in nearly every single episode, creating a weird visual hiccup that broke the reality of the transformation. The producers clearly knew about this problem because it was impossible to miss, but fixing it would have required filming new transformation sequences for each episode, which the show's tight budget couldn't accommodate. So they simply accepted that audiences would have to tolerate these background jumps and kept reusing the same footage throughout the series' run. For viewers paying close attention, it created an unintentionally surreal quality where Isis seemed to briefly teleport to different locations mid-transformation before returning to where she started. The continuity error became such a consistent part of the show that it was almost a trademark feature. Fact 7. The mystery school location. Throughout The Secrets of ISIS, the fictional Larkspur High School served as the primary setting where science teacher Andrea Thomas worked and most of the show's action unfolded. But Larkspur High wasn't a real school. It was actually Reseda High School in the San Fernando Valley, a real Los Angeles area campus that was dressed up and renamed for the production. The school provided the perfect suburban California high school aesthetic that the producers wanted, with its sprawling campus, outdoor walkways, and typical 70s-era architecture. What's particularly interesting is that this real school still exists today. though it's undergone significant changes since ISIS filmed there in the mid-70s. The campus is now known as Reseda Charter High School and houses multiple specialized educational programs serving different student populations. If you visited the location today, you could still recognize some of the buildings and outdoor areas that appeared in the show, though decades of renovations and updates have altered many details. The school's transformation from a traditional comprehensive high school to a charter school housing multiple programs mirrors how many Los Angeles area schools have evolved over the past 50 years. For fans of the show who want to visit the actual location where Andrea Thomas taught her science classes and dealt with various student problems before transforming into ISIS, the campus is still there and still functioning as an educational institution. It's one of the few ISIS filming locations that hasn't been demolished or completely transformed beyond recognition, making it a rare piece of tangible connection to the show's history. Fact 8. Filming during summer vacation. The production schedule for The Secrets of ISIS required filming at Reseda High School, but the producers faced an obvious problem. How do you film a show supposedly set during the school year when you need to use a real school campus that's full of actual students during regular sessions? The solution was simple but created an unintentionally eerie atmosphere. They filmed all the school scenes during summer vacation when students were away. This meant the hallways, classrooms, and outdoor areas that appeared on screen were completely empty of the hundreds of real teenagers who normally filled those spaces during the academic year. The deserted campus gave the show a strange, almost post-apocalyptic quality, with Andrea Thomas often walking through eerily quiet hallways or teaching in classrooms with only a handful of student actors present. The producers actually turned this limitation into an advantage for their supernatural storylines, since the empty, echoing quality of the vacant school building added an atmospheric element to scenes where mysterious or magical events were occurring. There were no real students accidentally wandering into frame, no background noise from classes in session, and no scheduling conflicts with actual school activities. The crew had complete control over the campus and could film whenever they needed without disruption. However, this also meant that the show could never convincingly portray a bustling, crowded high school environment. Any scene requiring crowds of students had to be carefully staged with hired extras, and even then, the school never quite looked as populated and lively as a real high school during the academic year would be. Fact 9. California masquerading as California. Despite being set at the fictional Larkspur High School in an unnamed California location, The Secrets of ISIS actually filmed at multiple real Los Angeles area locations that local viewers would have easily recognized. The show didn't try to hide or disguise these locations, they simply filmed wherever they had access and hoped audiences wouldn't notice or care that the geography around Larkspur High seemed to shift dramatically from episode to episode. One episode might feature scenes filmed in the Santa Susana Mountains, while another would use Hanson Dam Recreation Area in Lakeview Terrace. Despite these locations being many miles apart and having distinctly different terrain and vegetation, this created a strange situation where the show was set in California, filmed in California, but the fictional California town where Andrea Thomas taught seemed to have impossibly varied geography within just a short distance. The Santa Susana Mountains offered dramatic rocky terrain and scrubland perfect for outdoor adventure sequences, while Hanson Dam provided water features and more manicured recreational areas. Both were easily accessible from central Los Angeles, which made them practical choices for a production with limited time and budget. For viewers who lived in the Los Angeles area, this geographic impossibility would have been obvious and potentially amusing. They could recognize specific landmarks and locations that were supposedly all part of the same small town's vicinity. But for viewers elsewhere in the country watching on Saturday morning television, these were just generic California landscapes that all seemed plausibly connected. The show essentially created a fictional composite California town built from pieces of real locations scattered across the Los Angeles region. Fact 10. The glasses continuity problem. Beyond the background discontinuities created by stock transformation footage, The Secrets of ISIS had another persistent continuity problem that eagle-eyed viewers would have noticed. Andrea Thomas's glasses didn't behave consistently during her transformations. In some episodes, Andrea would carefully remove her glasses before transforming into ISIS, which made logical sense since the superhero persona didn't wear glasses. But because the show used the same stock transformation footage repeatedly, that footage sometimes showed Andrea still wearing her glasses during the actual transformation sequence, even when the episode had just shown her removing them moments earlier. The producers faced a choice: Either film new transformation sequences for every episode to maintain perfect continuity, or simply reuse the existing stock footage and accept that the glasses would appear and disappear in ways that defied logic. Unsurprisingly, given the show's limited budget, they chose the latter option. This meant that Andrea's glasses became something of an inconsistent prop throughout the series, present in the transformation footage even when they shouldn't be, creating another layer of visual discontinuity that viewers had to mentally ignore or accept. The glasses issue was actually more noticeable than some other continuity problems because glasses are such a distinctive visual element. They're right on the character's face in close-up shots, making their mysterious appearance or disappearance harder to overlook than background scenery changes. But like the background mismatches, this was apparently considered an acceptable compromise in the low-budget world of Saturday morning children's television, where production efficiency mattered more than perfect visual continuity. The glasses essentially became Schrödinger's glasses, simultaneously removed and not removed depending on which shot you were watching. Fact 11. The 1.5-acre pool location. When the Secrets of ISIS needed to film the episode titled Lucky, which required a substantial water location, the production headed to Hansen Dam Recreation Area in Lakeview Terrace. This location wasn't chosen randomly. It's home to one of the largest swimming pools in the entire United States, a massive aquatic facility spanning 1.5 acres of water surface. The pool is so enormous that it can accommodate 2,800 people at once, making it more like a small lake than what most people think of when they picture a swimming pool. This massive facility provided the perfect backdrop for any water-based rescue or adventure sequences the show needed, offering plenty of space for camera equipment, crew, and stunt work while still maintaining the appearance of a public recreational area. The pool's scale meant that filming there could create dramatic water scenes without the complications and dangers of filming in actual open water locations like lakes or the ocean. Hansen Dam Recreation Area was built in the 1970s as part of a flood control project, and the aquatic center quickly became a popular destination for Los Angeles residents seeking relief from the California heat. For the ISIS production, it offered the advantage of being a controlled environment with lifeguards and safety equipment already in place, which was crucial when filming any water-based stunts. What's particularly interesting is that this location is still actively used for filming today, nearly 50 years after ISIS shot there. The massive pool continues to attract production companies looking for impressive water locations, and it remains a functioning public recreational facility where people can swim in the same waters where the mighty ISIS once performed her heroic rescues. Fact 12. Charm's studio connection. Ray Art Studios in Canoga Park, which served as the production home for many of the Secrets of ISIS's interior scenes during the 1970s, went on to have a second life hosting another supernatural show with a female-focused cast decades later. From 1998 to 2004, the same studio facility housed the interior sets for the Hallowell Manor, the iconic Victorian home that served as the central location for the WB series Charmed during its first through sixth seasons. This created an unexpected through line connecting two shows about powerful women with supernatural abilities, filmed in the exact same building but separated by more than 2 decades. Where Andrea Thomas once transformed into the Egyptian goddess Isis, the Hallowell sisters Prue, Piper, Phoebe, and later Paige later cast spells and battled demons. Both shows featured strong female protagonists using extraordinary powers to help people and fight evil, and both filmed their interior scenes within the walls of the same Canoga Park studio facility. The studio's journey from housing an Egyptian goddess to hosting a coven of witches represents an interesting footnote in the history of female-led supernatural television. By the time Charmed moved into Ray Art Studios in the late 90s, most people had forgotten that ISIS had filmed there decades earlier, but the building itself carried that history in its walls. The coincidence becomes even more poignant given that Ray Art Studios was demolished shortly after Charmed moved its production elsewhere, meaning both shows are now connected by a shared filming location that no longer exists. The studio that once housed 2 generations of supernatural heroines has been completely erased and replaced with residential housing, taking both pieces of television history with it. Fact 13. Midday sun wash out. The Secrets of ISIS had a distinctive visual look that was partly the result of intentional creative choices and partly the result of budget limitations that forced less than ideal filming conditions. One of the most noticeable aspects of the show's appearance was its washed-out, overexposed quality, where California sunshine seemed to bleach the color out of outdoor scenes and create harsh shadows and bright highlights. This happened because the production couldn't afford to film during the optimal times of day when natural light is softer and more flattering, namely the early morning hours or late afternoon, often called the golden hour by cinematographers. Instead, budget constraints and tight shooting schedules forced the crew to film whenever they could get access to locations, which often meant shooting in the harsh midday sun when the light is strongest and least forgiving. Professional film and television productions typically avoid midday filming because the overhead sun creates unflattering shadows on actors' faces, washes out colors, and makes it difficult to properly expose the image. Bright areas become too bright, while shadowed areas become too dark. But the Secrets of ISIS didn't have the luxury of being that selective about their filming times. The result was a show that had an unintentionally dreamlike or almost ethereal quality, where everything seemed slightly overexposed, and the intense California sunlight dominated every outdoor scene. This wasn't a deliberate artistic choice to create a specific mood or atmosphere. It was simply the reality of low-budget television production in the 70s. Interestingly, this limitation became part of the show's visual identity, giving it a distinctive look that some viewers might have interpreted as intentionally otherworldly or magical, even though it was really just the consequence of filming in less than ideal lighting conditions to save time and money. Fact 14. The Cave with 1,000 Faces. While Bronson Canyon's most famous role might be as the Batcave entrance, that cave had actually appeared in hundreds of different productions long before either Batman or The Secrets of ISIS used it for filming. Starting back in the 1930s and continuing through today, that same tunnel entrance has played nearly every conceivable role that a cave could play in film and television. It's been an alien spacecraft landing site in science fiction movies, a hideout for outlaws in countless Western films, a monster's lair in horror movies, and a mysterious portal in fantasy productions. By the time ISIS filmed there in the 70s, that cave had already accumulated decades of screen history, having appeared in everything from low-budget B-movies to major Hollywood productions. The appeal was always the same. It was free, easily accessible, located right in Los Angeles, and had that perfect dramatic arch shape that photographed beautifully. What this meant for the Secrets of ISIS was that their Egyptian goddess was performing heroic rescues in a location that audiences might have subconsciously recognized from dozens of other shows and movies, even if they couldn't quite place where they'd seen it before. The cave had been repurposed so many times for so many different fictional purposes that it had become one of Hollywood's most versatile and hardest-working locations. For film historians and location scouts, Bronson Canyon represents the ultimate example of Hollywood efficiency and location recycling, where a single natural feature created by mining operations decades earlier became a permanent fixture of American pop culture. Every production that filmed there added another layer to the cave's accumulated fictional history, and ISIS's contribution to that history was just one more role in the cave's remarkably long and varied career. Fact 15. The studio's earthquake legacy. Ray Art Studios had a complex history that made its eventual demolition almost inevitable, even though that ending wouldn't come until years after The Secrets of ISIS finished production there. The building was originally constructed by Rockwell North American Aviation back in the 1960s as an industrial facility, not as a purpose-built film studio. It later transitioned into use as a production space, hosting various television shows and films including ISIS during the 70s. Then came the massive Northridge earthquake on January 17, 1994, which devastated large parts of the Los Angeles area and caused significant damage to countless buildings. Ray Art Studios was among the structures that sustained earthquake damage during that disaster. After the quake, the building underwent retrofitting and repairs to make it usable again, and it continued operating as a production facility for another decade, including housing the charmed interior sets from 1998 to 2004. But the earthquake damage, combined with the building's age and the increasing value of the land it sat on, meant it was essentially living on borrowed time. When the decision finally came to demolish the studio between 2004 and 2007, it was partly because the building had never fully recovered from the earthquake, and partly because residential development was simply more profitable than maintaining an aging production facility. This meant that The Secrets of ISIS had filmed in a location that was already somewhat compromised by the time it was finally torn down, even though the earthquake wouldn't occur until almost 20 years after the show finished production. The studio's journey from aviation facility to film studio to earthquake casualty to demolished site represents the cycle of building use and reuse that characterizes much of Los Angeles' history, where structures are constantly being repurposed until they're no longer viable and then erased to make way for something new.